Hey guys, it's Takasta here again. Welcome to another video review. So today I'll be reviewing the Razer Abyssus 2014 edition. So this is among two new mice that I bought, the Death Adder Chroma and the Abyssus 2014. So I think 2014 edition Abyssus is much more interesting than the Death Adder Chroma. The Death Adder Chroma, it was just a color release. This is actually a completely new refresh, completely new shell, although it takes this form factor of the Taipan. And I'll explain, maybe do some comparisons with the original Abyssus that I have here. In terms of the price, it is priced at $39.99, so I'll be doing some comparisons maybe with the original Abyssus and also the Kinzu V3, which is priced at a very, very similar price as well. I think Kinzu V3 is 30 US, this is 40 US. So in terms of the overall feel, I think I would prefer actually the Kinzu V3, but the Abyssus 2014 has its merits as well. In terms of its specifications, it actually uses the exact same specifications as the original Abyssus, which is kind of, even though it's a 2014 refresh, they still went with the same 3500 DPI, so this is the 3888 Avogo sensor. It uses Arm-on switches, it has pretty simple 3 buttons, but in terms of that, everything else is basically a completely new refresh. Unlike Death Adder, like I said. And I'll talk about that, about the weight, shape, and maybe the performance, which performance is actually exactly the same. In terms of the specifications, it is 80 grams, so it's very fairly light. Kind of like the Abyssus actually. The Abyssus is like 70 odd grams. This is slightly heavier. The Kinzu V3 is like 75 grams. This is about like 80 grams, so it is slightly heavier than the original Abyssus. However, it is lighter than maybe like Death Adder, for example, at 105 grams. In terms of the dimensions, 117 by 64 by 38 millimeters. So I do want to talk about the shape of this mouse. This is quite interesting, and I'll use the Abyssus and the Kinzu V3 as comparisons. So you can see that it is an ambidextrous mouse, staying true to its form factor. However, it does take the shape of the Taipan in the sense that for the grip, for the thumb rest and the 4th and 5th finger rest, the grip is goes much more, curves inwards and comes back out, much like the Taipan, for example. For the Abyssus, the shape was actually much straighter, if you can see right here. So maybe it's not as comfortable, it's not as ergonomic in a way, because the thumb rest and the 4th and 5th fingers, you're really gripping onto it, and you're really like claw gripping it quite hard. With the new Abyssus 2014 edition, I find myself, I'm actually not as claw gripping it as hard, because there is a space for my thumb to rest, and there's space for my 4th and 5th fingers to rest. So I actually find that quite nice. In terms of the height profile, I feel like the original, maybe even the Kinzu V3 and the original Abyssus, even though they are very low in the height profile, and it's fairly straight, there is no big curve, kind of like the Death Adder, for example. There is no big hill that really goes into your hand. However, with the Abyssus 2014 edition, I actually do feel like it's very much like the Taipan, but it feels a little bit bulkier. It feels more like a tank rather than like a slim, long Taipan. If you can imagine a Taipan, if they just like crush it and shorten it, this is what you basically get. You get the Abyssus. Even with my hand, it's 19 centimeters from the tip to the base. I feel like it does fill up my hand quite well, and because it has quite a rounded base, unlike that of the Abyssus. Abyssus, if you can see the sides, is quite straight, so kind of like just goes in a fairly straight form and fairly narrow form. However, I would say the Abyssus is much more like one of the Logitech mice. I want to say like the G1 in some kind of comparison. However, the base is much more rounded off and just goes in the hand and fits really, really nicely. So in terms of a small claw grip kind of rounded off mouse, this is just fairly interesting. In terms of the shape, it's quite similar to that, a little bit similar to that to the Orochi, so it's more like a mix of the Orochi and the Taipan in some sense. But in the conclusion of the shape, I do absolutely love the shape. I played a game of Dota. I found that I just had more, it felt like an ergonomic mouse because of the grip that was filling in my hand. However, I was still claw gripping it, as you can see, like how I'm doing it right now. Moving on to maybe the firmware and the performance, like I said before, there's no refresh here. It's the exact same performance, the 3888. So if you like the performance in the older 3.5G Death Adder or the Abyssus, for example, this does use the same thing. I mean, in terms of a refresh, a 2014 refresh, you might think, well, it's not offering anything new. Why the hell should I buy this? However, I guess it is just offering maybe the same mouse, but or the same performing mouse, but like maybe a different shell, and maybe refreshing it to. I can understand why they're doing it from a company perspective, from a customer perspective. At least with the Abyssus 2014, they actually offered a new shell rather than the Chroma, which is kind of crappy. They just offered like a lighting system, which is I find pretty ridiculous. Maybe some more differences that comparing the older Abyssus and the newer Abyssus. Obviously the shape, its lightness. Oh, in terms of the performance, you can set the DPI, which is very, very important. You can set the DPI in increments of 100, unlike the original Abyssus where you can only set 400, 1800, and 3500. In terms of the polling rate, you could also set between 125, 500, 1000. Before Abyssus, you can only set 125 and 1000 as well. So in terms of these things, there is a bit more programmability in the new mouse, which is, I find, is quite important. There's no on-the-fly switching, on-the-fly DPI switching, stuff like that. However, I feel like it is pretty good that at least you get to set the exact DPI that you're very, very comfortable with. This is a big problem that the Abyssus had, in fact, that it was just way oversimplified. This is still simple, slightly more expensive, $39, $40. However, I think it's quite good that you could set, the performance is a little bit better. In terms of the overall finish, it's very, very similar to the Taipan. If you've used that before, it's pretty much the same. One last thing I actually wanted to say is actually the scroll wheel and this side, I didn't talk about it before, but the side grip. The side grip, it looks like the Taipan, it looks like the Death Adder Chroma, for example. Death Adder Chroma, I still have it plugged in right here, but it's completely different. It's much more plasticky. It's not very sticky. In that sense, I do prefer the Chroma side grip because it's quite slightly stickier, slightly grippier. You can feel the hard rubber. For this, it's just somewhat plasticky. The grip itself does not really stick out. It's not a very, very nice grip. However, I don't mind it as much, to be honest. In the original Abyssus, you can see right here, they didn't even have a grip, and people just didn't really mind it because it was on the cheap end. For this mouse, I guess they have a grip area, I guess, on both on the right and the left hand side. So I don't really mind it as much. It's not extremely greatly built. It's not crappily built, I would say. I still prefer this over the SteelSeries, the SteelSeries rival grip, to be honest. But nothing much to complain, I guess. It does work. And I don't find like my hands, you might find it slightly slippery, that's what I would say, but for $40 I guess this is what you're expecting. For the scroll wheel, I guess is the last difference. They did change the scroll wheel. It is fairly different. I think you can find the scroll wheel in the more of their cheaper Razer mice. To my mind, I can't think of one scroll wheel off the top of my head, but all you have to know is that it's pretty easy to scroll through every dent. You don't have to use too much force, and there is a very, very little stoppage between each scroll. So that basically concludes my overall review of the Abyssus 2014. Very simple refresh, no new technology. However, the shape is quite one that I actually quite like. If your hands are slightly smaller, 18, 19 centimeters, and you want somewhat of a mouse of a claw grip, I actually might recommend trying this out. For the Death Adder Chroma, if you already have used Death Adder, don't recommend it. But if you want something that's kind of smaller and and still performs quite decently, this mouse might just work for you. It does feel a little bit like a ergonomic mouse because how like big and kind of like how it fills my hand. However, like compared to the Kinzu V3, for example, I've been using Kinzu V3 a lot, and it doesn't fill my hand as much. It's actually quite small, but I enjoyed the narrow shape of the Kinzu. For this one, it's not exactly very narrow. It feels a little bit bulkier, but I quite enjoy it and quite like the maybe the different feel of it. So I'm thinking for myself, I'll probably switch between the Kinzu V3 and the Abyssus 2014, which I'll probably keep. For the Chroma, probably won't keep, but that's I guess you've watched my other review anyway. So hope you guys enjoyed that video review. If you like this, I've been making a lot of videos lately because I guess there's a lot of products, but hopefully if I see something of interest, I'll make some more videos. So thanks for watching, guys, and stay tuned.